The one that was taken from me. Same for most of my family. And as for vengeance...
Welcome to the U.S. Marshal.
Yellowstone fans, gather around, because we are just days away from watching Marshals, the most different Yellowstone spin-off so far, and it's one that will leave us completely speechless. I genuinely can't wait to see how it all unfolds, and I know you're just as excited as I am. In this video, I'm going to break down what happens in the very first episode of Marshals, why Casey leaves his peaceful life behind and returns to action-packed days, and most importantly, when we'll finally get to watch this incredible series. Buckle up, because everything you're about to hear may shock you. Let's start with why Casey says goodbye to his quiet life with Monica and Tate at East Camp. Based on what we've seen in the trailer, a tragedy is clearly on the way. One scene shows Casey and Tate standing beside someone lying in Casey's bed, covered with a white sheet, most likely Monica. That moment alone strongly suggests that Monica is dead. In another scene, we see someone approaching Casey at night, wrapped in a blanket. From a distance, it appears to be Monica again. But here's the strange part. We never see her face. Because of this, I believe Monica will be played by a stunt double in a few scenes leading up to her death. If Kelsey Asbill were actually present in the series, even if her character was going to die, we would likely see her face in the trailers. So the real question becomes, why did Monica die? Honestly, if her death were due to natural causes, I think Casey would try to accept it rather than joining the U.S. Marshals. That's why I believe, starting from the very first episode, we'll learn that Monica was murdered, possibly by people hostile toward Native Americans. This theory also makes sense because Thomas Rainwater and Mo will appear in the series. Thomas has always stepped in whenever something happened to a Native American, so it wouldn't be surprising to see him standing beside Casey after Monica's death. In Marshals, Thomas and Mo will likely hunt down Monica's killer in their own way, while Casey pursues justice alongside the U.S. Marshals. And I believe there's one more person who will seek revenge for Monica: Tate. As we know, Tate was already one of the most traumatized characters in Yellowstone. Losing his mother would completely devastate him. And since he's no longer a little kid, I think Tate will go after Monica's killers on his own. At that point, both Casey and Thomas will struggle to keep an eye on him, especially since Casey will be spending most of his time working with the Marshals. I'm almost certain Tate will be extremely hard to control. So who brings Casey into the U.S. Marshals? That would be his former SEAL team leader, Pete Calvin, played by Logan Marshall Green, who also serves as the head of the Marshals. Even from the trailers, it's clear how much Pete cares about Casey and how professional he is. As Casey processes his grief, Pete will likely be the one standing by his side the most. Now let's talk about the rest of the Marshals team. One member is Andrea, played by Ash Santos, a Bronx native who was exiled to Montana after speaking up at the wrong time in her previous job. That detail alone makes her character incredibly intriguing. If she was punished for telling the truth, she could be one of the most ethical and strong-minded characters on the show. But if she has a habit of exposing secrets, she may be the one who constantly puts the team in danger. Another Marshal is Belle, played by Ariel Kebbel. She's a former ATF agent who loves undercover work and is easily the most mysterious member of the team so far. From what we see in the trailers, she's also warm and approachable. I get the feeling that Belle could eventually replace Monica in Casey's life. Not immediately, of course, but she may help him adjust to the Marshals and find a reason to keep going after his loss. The final team member is Miles, played by Tatanka Means. He's a former police officer from the Broken Rock Reservation who grew tired of arresting his own people and decided he could better protect them as a marshal. This character already feels incredibly deep and morally strong, and seeing a Native American character written this way only makes me more excited for the series. Now for the biggest question, why is Marshals the most different Yellowstone spin-off yet? Simple. We've never seen this level of action in the Yellowstone universe before. That said, does this mean we won't see familiar faces? Unfortunately, I don't think many Yellowstone characters will appear regularly. However, we may see some major names pop up in special situations.
For example, we're almost certainly going to see Monica's funeral, and I believe Beth, Rip, and the old Yellowstone crew will be there. Another possibility is Tate turning to Beth and Rip as he struggles to cope with everything he's going through. I really hope Marshals doesn't completely separate itself from the Yellowstone universe, and that we continue to see that connection preserved through familiar faces. Finally, let's talk about when we'll actually get to watch this series. We're only days away. The first episode of Marshals airs on March 1st on CBS. So get ready for intense drama and non-stop action. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think we'll see in Marshals? Do you believe Monica was truly murdered? Let's talk in the comments. And if you're curious about what could happen in another Yellowstone spin-off, 1969, make sure to check out that video next. Something feels very wrong from the very first seconds of the Marshals Episode 1 official trailer. This is not the peaceful Yellowstone world we are used to. This time, the silence feels heavier, the danger feels closer, and Casey looks like a man who has already lost everything. The first look at Marshals does not just tease action, it promises pain, revenge, and a story that will completely change Casey's life forever. And if you thought this spin-off would slowly build up like Yellowstone, think again. The trailer makes one thing very clear. From Episode 1, Marshals is going all in. The official trailer for Marshals Episode 1 opens with a dark and emotional tone, and right away we understand that this series will be very different from anything we have seen in the Yellowstone universe. We see Casey in a quiet moment, but there is no peace in his eyes. He looks tired, broken, and emotionally drained. This alone tells us that something terrible has already happened before the story truly begins. The trailer does not clearly show Monica, but her absence is louder than any dialogue. The way Casey moves, the way he reacts to people around him, and the way silence follows him everywhere strongly suggests that he is carrying deep grief. This first look makes it very clear that Episode 1 will not waste time explaining emotions slowly. Instead, it throws us directly into Casey's pain. We also see hints of a tragic event that forces Casey to leave his peaceful life behind. The calm days at East Camp are gone, and whatever happened there has pushed Casey to a breaking point. The trailer shows quick flashes of tension, urgency, and danger, suggesting that this tragedy was not an accident. Everything points toward violence, and that is exactly why Casey can no longer stay away from the life he tried so hard to leave behind. What makes this even more intense is how alone Casey feels. Even when people are around him, it feels like he is emotionally isolated. This first episode looks like it will focus heavily on his internal struggle, the moment where grief turns into anger and anger turns into action. Marshals Episode 1 is clearly setting up Casey's transformation, not as a hero, but as a man who has nothing left to lose. And that is what makes this first look so powerful. It does not rely on explosions or big action scenes to grab attention. Instead, it uses emotion, silence, and tension to tell us that once Casey steps into the world of the U.S. Marshals, there will be no turning back. This episode is not just the beginning of a new job for Casey. It is the beginning of a much darker journey, one driven by loss, unanswered questions, and a need for justice that could easily turn into revenge. Marshals Episode 1 is designed to shock Yellowstone fans because it completely breaks the rhythm we are used to, and the trailer makes that very clear. Yellowstone always took its time to build tension, but Marshals moves fast, and the danger feels immediate. From the first look, we can feel that Casey is being pulled into a world where rules are different, and hesitation can get people killed. The U.S. Marshals are not ranchers, and they are not politicians. They operate in the shadows, chasing the most dangerous criminals, and Episode 1 looks like it will throw Casey directly into that chaos. The trailer shows him surrounded by people who are trained, focused, and ready for violence at any moment. And this is a huge contrast to the life he was trying to protect with Monica and Tate. What will truly shock fans is how quickly Casey seems to accept this new role. This tells us that his pain is stronger than his fear. Instead of running away from danger, he walks straight into it, almost like he is looking for something to numb the loss he feels inside. The trailer also hints that the cases handled in Marshals are much darker and more intense than anything we saw in Yellowstone. These are not land disputes or family power struggles. These are dangerous fugitives, high-risk operations, and situations where one wrong move can end a life. Another shocking element is how isolated Casey feels even within the team. He is not treated like a legend or a hero. He is tested, observed, and pushed to his limits. This makes Marshall's feel more realistic and more brutal. Yellowstone fans are used to seeing Casey as someone who belongs somewhere, but in Marshall's episode 1, it feels like he does not belong anywhere anymore. And that emotional disconnection is what makes the episode so powerful. The trailer also suggests that episode 1 will end on a strong cliffhanger, possibly connected to the case that brings Casey into the Marshalls in the first place. There is a sense that this mission is personal, even if it is not officially stated. Everything about this first episode feels heavy, urgent, and emotionally loaded. Marshalls is not trying to comfort Yellowstone fans, it is trying to challenge them. It asks the audience to watch Casey in pain, to follow him into a violent world, and to accept that this series will not hold back. Episode 1 looks like it will redefine Casey's story, turning him from a man searching for peace into someone driven by loss and a desperate need for justice. And that is exactly why Marshall's episode 1 will shock Yellowstone fans more than they expect. One of the biggest questions hanging over Marshall's episode 1 is simple but terrifying. Who killed Monica? The official trailer never confirms her death directly, but the silence around her character is impossible to ignore. In Yellowstone, Monica was always at the center of Casey's emotional world, and removing her presence changes everything. The first look strongly suggests that Monica's death is not natural and not accidental. The mood of the trailer, the urgency in Casey's actions, and the way he seems consumed by anger all point toward a violent end. If Monica had died from illness or an accident, Casey would likely stay with Tate and try to protect what little family he has left. Instead, he joins the U.S. Marshals, a move that only makes sense if someone took Monica away from him. One strong possibility is that Monica was killed because of her Native American identity. Throughout Yellowstone, she faced hostility, prejudice, and danger, and Marshals may finally confront those threats head-on. This would explain why Thomas Rainwater and Mo are expected to appear in the series. They have always stepped in when injustice targeted Native Americans, and Monica's death could be the event that pulls them back into Casey's life. Another possibility is that Monica was killed because she knew something she was not supposed to know. If she witnessed a crime, crossed the wrong people, or stood up to the wrong power, her death could be part of a much larger conspiracy. That would turn Marshalls into more than a revenge story. It would become a hunt for truth. The trailer also raises the disturbing idea that Monica's killers may still be close, watching Casey, waiting for their next move. This could explain the constant tension and the feeling that danger is always just one step away. And then there is Tate. If Monica was murdered, Tate's reaction could become one of the darkest storylines in the entire Yellowstone universe. Episode 1 may show the very beginning of his emotional collapse. Losing his mother could push him toward anger, fear, and even violence. There is a real chance that Tate will want revenge just as badly as Casey, if not more. That creates a terrifying situation where both father and son are chasing justice in different ways. Marshall's episode 1 will likely avoid giving us all the answers right away. Instead, it will plant clues, doubts, and questions that keep the audience guessing. Who pulled the trigger? Why was Monica targeted? And was this crime meant to send a message? The trailer suggests that this mystery will be the emotional engine of the series. Every arrest, every chase, and every risk Casey takes may lead him one step closer to Monica's killer. And that makes this question the most important one of all. Who killed Monica, and what will Casey become once he finds out? Marshalls is just days away from its premiere, and the closer we get, the clearer it becomes that this story is going to be one of the most heartbreaking chapters in the entire Yellowstone universe. The official trailer does not try to hide the emotional weight of episode 1. Instead, it leans into it. Everything feels heavy, from the quiet moments to the intense action. This is not a story about winning or building power. It is a story about loss, grief, and the difficult choices people make when their world falls apart. Casey is no longer chasing balance between two lives. That struggle is over. The man we see in the first look is someone who has already lost the life he wanted, and that makes every decision he takes feel more dangerous. What makes this even more heartbreaking is how final everything feels. The trailer gives the impression that there is no reset button for Casey. Once he steps into the world of the U.S. Marshals, he is leaving behind the last pieces of his old self. The peaceful life with Monica and Tate is gone, and even if he survives every mission, he will never truly get that life back. Episode 1 looks like it will focus deeply on emotional pain rather than just action. We see moments where Casey seems lost, moments where silence says more than words, and moments where anger quietly takes control. This kind of storytelling makes the pain feel real. It does not rush past grief. It forces the audience to sit with it. Another heartbreaking element is Tate. Even if he does not appear much in episode 1, his presence is felt everywhere. Casey's fear of losing him, his guilt for leaving him behind, and his desperation to protect him all add layers to the story. Marshals is not just about catching criminals. It is about what grief does to a family and how far a father is willing to go after losing the person he loved most. The trailer also suggests that justice in this series will not feel clean or satisfying. Every victory may come with a cost. Every step forward may pull Casey further away from peace. And that is what makes this story so painful to watch, but also impossible to look away from. As the release date approaches, one thing is certain. Marshals Episode 1 is not meant to entertain lightly. It is meant to hurt, to shock, and to emotionally challenge the audience. This is a series that asks us to follow a broken man into a violent world and understand why he chooses that path. And when Marshals finally premieres, viewers should be ready, because this heartbreaking story is about to begin. Marshals Episode 1 is not just the beginning of a new series, it is a turning point for the entire Yellowstone universe. The official trailer makes it clear that this story is expanding the world in a much darker and more dangerous direction. By focusing on the U.S. Marshals, the series moves away from land wars and family politics and dives straight into national-level threats, violent criminals, and moral choices that have no easy answers. This shift changes the scale of the Yellowstone universe forever. Casey is no longer protecting one ranch or one family. He is stepping into a role where every decision can affect innocent lives, and that responsibility will slowly reshape who he is. Episode 1 looks like it will plant the seeds for long-term consequences. The pain Casey carries into the Marshals will not disappear after one mission. Instead, it will influence every relationship he builds and every risk he takes. The trailer hints that trust will be a major theme. Casey is surrounded by skilled professionals, but they are strangers, and in this world, trust must be earned. That tension will likely define the team dynamic going forward. Another important sign from the first look is that Marshals does not want to completely cut ties with Yellowstone. While the story stands on its own, the emotional weight comes from everything we already know about Casey. His past choices, his losses, and his family history all shape this new journey. That means future episodes could still connect back to familiar characters in meaningful ways, especially when it comes to Tate.